First of all, you know very well that I wrote a minority report on that piece of legislation. I don't agree that anybody should be excluded from benefiting this money, because this is not an individual person's money. This is taxpayers' money. Be that as it may, I am the incoming chairperson of iPod. I am going to take initiative to engage all political parties with the representation in Parliament to ensure that we have a discussion on this matter. I don't believe in exclusion.
So, going by the...
As far as my understanding of the law is concerned, every political party with representation in Parliament, regardless of what time they crossed, should be entitled to that money. And that has been my position. I have shared it with the Electoral Commission. I have shared it with the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, but I am not the implementer. So if there is need, if anybody seems dissatisfied, then it's a matter we can take to court for final resolution. But as far as I'm concerned, people who have crossed and have joined the new parties, those parties they have joined, for example, now Ecological Party of Uganda, headed by Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, is now a party with representation in Parliament. So it is entitled to funding. The Democratic Front, headed by Chief Matthias Impuga, with 3 or 4 MPs, they are a party with representation in Parliament. So they are entitled to funding. So that is my understanding of the law. That is my position. And as I said, when I assume the chairpersonship of iPod, those are issues I want to bring on the table for discussion.
So how many parties do we have in iPod now? Given by your understanding?
We have 6 parties now in iPod, because first of all, the current iPod arrangement has been in existence for the last 10 years or so. The parties that initially signed the iPod MOU are the same parties that are still in iPod, namely UPC, DP, FDC, JEMA, then the NRM. We used to have CP. CP lost membership and they are now out. So the numbers have not changed. Now the newer parties have not committed to the iPod framework. So we wait to see whether they will commit to the iPod framework, in which case they will qualify for party funding according to the new piece of legislation.
How much is that?
I'm not so sure. That's not information that
you know the budget?
Well, that's not information I am privy to.
Well, for the record, you know, I opposed the amendment to Section 14, which had sought to condition the funding of political parties to participation in iPod. And I still stand by that conviction. And in my minority report, the budget was placed at 45 billion shillings. My grievance was that there are key service delivery gaps. For example, if you look at the situation at Mulago, the Cancer Institute, the Uganda Heart Institute, and the regional referral hospitals, you look at the situation of the teachers who are demanding improvement in their salaries, the servicemen, soldiers, and police. So I thought the 45 billion, instead of being spent on political parties, which political parties can actually use other means to finance their activities. But it was defeated. And now the attempt now to share that money, excluding other political parties, I think is very unfair, because when we go into an election, there are new political parties that are also going to contest at the level of the presidency. So how do we accommodate them? Because you must go in an election with a level ground. So if you uplift about 5 or 6 political parties who are in parliament and you finance them up to a tune of 7 billion, you are discriminating against the other new political parties that would also fill candidates at different level. The second issue I have is that in our politics, you may not be successful in the presidency, you may not be successful in the parliamentary seat, but you are successful in the local government, LC5, LC3, and etc. Where is such a political party accommodated? So we need to look at that and expand it so that there is fairness, there is reason, there is logic, and the competition that every political party will go for, they understand that they will not be discriminated.
I want to understand this one.
I think it was brought in bad faith. The claim was that the National Unity Platform has refused to join iPod, but have been partaking into the disbursement from the Electoral Commission. So they wanted to condition NUP to go and participate in iPod. But the issue with iPod is that first, it is an NGO which was initiated by the Dutch, and two, it is voluntary. Three is that there are people who disagree. For example, a party may say we don't tolerate corruption. So how do you force me to go and sit with parties that tolerate corruption? It is my right to refuse. There are parties who may have certain principles which cannot allow them to support that same principle from another political party. So I thought it was against the spirit of the Constitution that you are trying to force political parties to work together, to unite, and yet the very reason why these political parties have been formed is because they disagree amongst themselves. Otherwise, we would have one political party accommodating everybody else.
Okay, the other issue I want to understand. What do you...
don't support that political parties must be funded or financed. I don't. I know in some countries, I think somewhere in Sweden, I think, it's where this concept was picked from. But the dynamics, the political dynamics in such countries are actually quite different from here in Uganda. So every political party must be able to raise their funding on their own, like we have seen recently with NUP. And for us in Uganda People's Congress, we pay annual subscription. When we are contesting, we pay nomination fees. We also have some properties that help to raise money for the party. And we have friends, other political parties. So if it were acceptable to Parliament, I think we should just totally repeal that section and allow more freedom to raise money within the private sector, within the country, and internationally, so that burden of 45 billion plus goes away. Otherwise, now we have seen many people are forming political parties, struggling to get one seat in Parliament, so that they also now start partaking of that. So the motivation to form political parties should not be to access the taxpayers' money. That is completely wrong.
And even accountability has been a problem.
The general thinking is that that money is to buy political parties, to compromise them. Once you are given money and there is no condition attached to it, you can spend at your pleasure. Then it turns out to be some kind of formalized bribe or an official compromise of the political parties. Otherwise, we would expect that these political parties are conditioned, for example, on areas maybe of capacity building, area of maybe supporting their administrative expenses. But as of now, you can decide to even spend this money in a very reckless way, and there is no sanction against that.
Thank you so much.
You cannot force people, first of all, you cannot force people to associate if they don't want to associate. The association must be meaningful. The reason why I refused to go to iPod, because history had shown that our predecessors had discussed several things which had not been implemented. So it does not make sense for us to waste a lot of money into boardroom meetings that do not yield a lot of things. That's why we refused to join iPod, because iPod wasn't being meaningful to us. But I just find many of those people mistaken, because we are actually members of the National Consultative Forum and we are vice chair. So I don't know what they wanted to achieve out of this. Well, if they want to conscript us to belong to iPod, we refused. That's it. Okay? And they were not going to force us to associate in iPod. But we are members of the National Consultative Forum. I don't know. I just don't know what they wanted to achieve. They just wanted to force us, okay, to belong to an organization which we refuse to subscribe to. And that's all. And we are saying we are not going to be conscripted, okay? You cannot force us to belong. You can only associate out of will, not out of coercion, okay? And that we're not going to do it.
This thing is a vacuum.
Of course, they're looking for every gap. They're looking for every gap to deny us funding. And I know that when we refuse again to be part of iPod, they'll use that. And I think we shall sort it out in the courts of law. That's what I think. Because we are already members of the National Consultative Forum. We have a delegate. Comrade Katana is a delegate to the National Consultative Forum and is the vice chair of that forum. What more do they need us to do? The other one was the creation of a foreign entity, okay, that was not even following up. They weren't following up to see that whatever was coming as resolutions from that meeting was being realized. People want us to go to President Museveni and beg and beg. We're not going to bring to beg from President Museveni to give us national resources, because those resources are appropriated here in Parliament, an entitlement of whoever is placed somewhere. Okay, us being placed as a party in a leading opposition, we have entitlements that we belong to. So the previous law, the Political Party and Organizations Act, entitles us to getting money from each member of parliament that is in parliament. Now they want to deny us that money on ground that we refuse to associate with them, and we're not going to be forced to associate.
And finally, what is
President problem is ego. He just wants to be happy that they have invited us in State House and we are there and Chagulanyi is there. It is ego to command that you people all come and we all go kneeling, and we are saying no, we are not going to do it. We are going to follow the systems and the structures how they are supposed to be in parliament, okay, in governance. And the way the structure is designed is that the leader, the parties in parliament, they have a leader of opposition, and that leader of opposition leads us here. And when we go to associate as parties, we also have delegates that we have sent there. So no one is going to go and kneel before President Museveni for money. No, we are going to follow systems the way they should be and follow the structure the way it is designed. It is ego that is killing President Museveni. Just to see us on the knees, and we are not going to do that.
Of course, when it comes to public resources, especially taxpayers' money, when the law is clear that political parties should be constrained from seeking money outside the country and also soliciting for money within the country, and instead work with money that has been allocated to them through iPod, if that is the basis, and again within the same law, as we saw and witnessed, that amendments were made that had an effect of coercing political parties to forcefully sit in meetings that include the party in the government, NRM, whether it is against their wish or it is within their wish. And parties that divert from that, parties that resist sitting with NRM, are denied funding. Now, that when is contrasted with the spirit of the opposition, the spirit of Ugandans who feel that they are oppressed, I believe NUP will be strong even when denied access to taxpayers' money, just because it has refused to sit with the party that has denied Ugandans services in spite of collecting very high tax from the very Ugandans. I believe support will come from all corners of the country to help NUP overcome any monetary need that may arise during the campaigns. So it is only in the interest of the party in government to distribute taxpayers' money, not its own money, but taxpayers' money for political activities as the original law intended to do, not as the original law was manipulated to act.
Okay. Katue kama Uganda.